Hi team, it's great for me to present this to you and to share with you some of my experience and what we do in Hamman drones from a camera operating point of view. I just want to emphasize that this is the way I do things, and this is the way that we've been training people to operate within our company. It's not the only way to do things, but I know that it works. And this is how we train our people, and it would be good for you to be familiar with the system, and if you execute accordingly, it should go well. I'm always filled with gratitude for the work that I'm doing, because it's such a privilege to do what we are doing. We see amazing locations, we work with wonderful creative people all over the world. I think that if you walk onto a film set with a sense of gratitude within you, then it spills over on other people. I worked on the set of Raised by Wolves with Ridley Scott, and when I walked onto that set the first morning, I just thought to myself, wow, what a privilege and an honor for me to actually be there and to contribute creatively to this project. We always have to feel so thankful that we can do what we are doing. I'm honestly living my dream. Every day is a challenge, every day is an adventure, every day is part of this amazing journey. So if you don't want challenges, if you don't want to get stressed out from time to time, this is the wrong job for you. I've been talking to Jamie Ramsey, who is an international DOP. He works a lot in South Africa and he works in the UK. He said to me, the difference between you guys and other drone companies worldwide, because he works with drone companies worldwide, is that you get it. And what that means is that you understand the context of the story and you contribute to that story. Our vision is to be storytellers that delivers the most beautiful shots to the film industry. We are not doing this job because we want to make money. Passion drives the process, not money. I know it's easy to say that, but for me, on a personal level, my focus is always on the execution. And when I go home in the evening, I want to know that I've experienced those goosebump moments where I know, wow, we nailed that shot. And when I drive home, I think about it and I'm thinking, wow, we had a good day. I'm not thinking, wow, I'm going to put X amount of money in my pocket. If that's the way you think, your thinking is wrong. So I will encourage everybody, that's actually a requirement from our side, is that you have to watch all the masterclasses, even if you feel it's not your department, so that you can understand what everybody in their department is supposed to be doing. So let's talk about how the ROC works. First of all, we all need to understand and know that. ROC stands for RPAS Operating Certificate, in line with civil aviation requirements and what we need as a company to be able to operate legally in this industry. And we have our systems in place that will be explained to you in more detail in other masterclasses that we will present. Number one is always the safety of your crew and the safety of your equipment. That is something that we always help each other with and work towards. I'm looking for camera operators who are DOPs, Those are people with camera experience. You must understand your camera, you must understand your f-stop, you must understand the terminology and the language that you talk to your DOP. And if the director is technical or maybe comes from a camera background, he will also talk that language. And that communication is then very effective. What do you do when you arrive on set? When you arrive on set, the first thing that you do is you report to the AD. That's the assistant director. The reason why I report to the AD is because the AD is the guy that runs the set. He's in charge, he understands the schedule. He will know when the drone team is going to be up. So what I always do is I go to the AD and I report to the AD and I said, hello, good morning. I just want to tell you that we are standing by. Please let us know when our first shot will be. Sometimes he will tell you immediately. Sometimes he doesn't know and he first want to talk to the DOP and the director. But most of the time he will know exactly how his schedule should run because he's responsible for how the schedule is timed during the day. You've got on long form 12 hours, 12-hour days, and on commercial short form you've got 10-hour days. So within those 10 hours they've got to fit in so many shots, and the drone shots will be sometimes just in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day in the golden hour. Sometimes it's very drone intensive where we will work the whole day, and sometimes we will really just be on set to execute one shot. So the next thing that you do is you need communication. And if you have an assistant, you tell your assistant to run to the unit department to get 2 radios at least, so that we can communicate with the AD or whoever we need to communicate in the crew, whether it's the camera department, whether it's the grips department, whatever it may be. We need that communication. So that's one of the first things we do. In the training of our assistant, the assistant will know that one of the first things that he or she should do is to run to the unit department and to get radio so that we have that communication. The next thing you do as the camera operator is you have to know what the camera settings are. And if you did not sort out those settings at your gear check stage, which may be the day or 2 days before, you get your camera department or somebody from the DIT side, the DIT side, to come and make sure that the settings in your camera is correct and in line with the main camera. That's a very important thing to do, and it's your responsibility. Very often I know the DOP already, or if it's an international DOP that we meet for the first time, I will go and introduce myself and I will say, hi, I'm so-and-so from the drone team. Obviously we must have our branding on. That's very important to us. It plays an important role in terms of establishing our brand on the set, and it also plays a very important role in the sense that people can identify you. So if you arrive on set with the Hamman drone signs on your doors, the guys that's going to point you to parking positions will know that you need to take equipment in closer to the set, and that's very important to understand that. And also when you walk around on set and it says on your back, Hamman drone crew, then people know which department you belong to. The security guys won't block you. You will have open access to where you need to go. When I then go to the DOP and I introduce myself, I will ask him what lens would he like to start on. And I will ask him what shot does he have in mind. So he will then either take me for a walk and show me this is what he's got in mind, this is what he visualizes. Most of the time I will have a lot of information in my head already, because when I know I go onto a job, I will request the storyboard. I will read everything I can find in line with that job. If it's a car commercial, if it's some story like a feature film, for example, or a TV series, then you need to understand what is the context of the scene that you are filming. You need to understand the vibe that the main camera is going to create. And you've got to lock onto that. It's extremely important. The other thing that you are responsible for is the cards that go into the camera. How many cards do you have? The DIT department, those are the guys that wrangle the cards. They will want the cards from you after every setup. And that's also something that you need to understand. Where's your cards? Where's your card reader? What is the protocol in terms of that? The DIT department needs your card readers, and they need the correct cables to plug into their system to download the cards. Remember, the cards are really like gold. If you don't have your cards, you can't film. You also have to collect your cards at the end of the day and make sure that they go back into the system or the set where they're supposed to be. You need to mark your shots properly. It's not your job to fill in the slate, but you have to say to camera department, where's the loader, so that they can mark the shot and they can get the right information on your shot before you take off. So all of these things is preparation work. Be on point, be focused, understand what you need to do, and execute things in the most professional way that you can. All these things you need to understand. You need to eat and sleep and drink what you do if you want to be on top of the pile. It becomes a lifestyle. It's not just the job that you do. Who is in charge of the shot? So on set, you will have 3 crew members. If you are flying with an Alta 8, those will be the pilot, the camera operator, and the assistant. When you fly with Inspire 2, most of the time you will have 2 people, which will be the pilot and the camera operator. So I just want to explain what those roles are and who's actually in charge of the shot. I always say there must be a captain on a ship. If there's no captain on the ship, nobody gives direction, and you can get into serious trouble because of that. In my book, the camera operator is in charge of the shot, and that is not negotiable whatsoever. He's in charge of what the outcome is going to be. Both the camera operator and the pilot must visualize the shot, but at the end of the day, the camera operator must execute the shot, and he must position the camera exactly where he would like it to be, or she would like it to be, in line with what the director and the DOP is asking you. So you need to understand what they want. You need to understand their brief very clearly. Sometimes they're not clear. Sometimes they confuse between themselves what they want. What I do then is I make a suggestion. I say, can I suggest something? And I will propose a shot. Or very often I see the shot, and when you build a reputation that you are a creative that makes a contribution, then people will allow you to be more creative, and they will just say, just give us one of your magic shots. How do you see the shot? And that's where we want to be. That's the ideal situation. The procedure that you then follow as the operator, once everything is checked and everything technical is in order and you've got all those ducks in a row, you take the pilot and you walk the flight line, you explain the shot to the pilot, and you agree on how high he's going to start in his first position and what his flight line should be. And you will indicate to some marker on the horizon, like a tree or a building or whatever, and tell him that I want you to fly from this position straight to that building. Then he's got a reference, or she's got a reference of exactly how to execute that flight line. He must execute that flight line as accurately as he can every time. Let's say, for example, the director says, no, but we want to come a little bit more round to the side, then he will adjust that flight line. I'll give you an example. There's a car traveling in front of a row of trees like this, and the pilot's over here, it's very difficult to judge how far the drone is from those trees. If you have to track along that road and you've got to follow this car in front of the trees, the chances that he could fly into the trees is very real in that situation. So the pilot should not stand there. The pilot will move his position so that he can see the flight line in relation to the trees. That's extremely important then to ask the pilot, are you happy with standing here to execute the shot? That is the pilot's call from a safety point of view. He may adjust that. I always go to the pilot, to Timothy, whoever I'm working with, and I say, where would you like to stand? This is the flight line, so tell me what will work the best for you. That's very important because that's safety. He must decide what is safe, or she must decide what is safe. Make very sure that your communication with your pilot is working well, because as the camera operator, you should talk to the pilot all the time. You should say, go a little bit slower, go a little bit faster, a bit higher, a bit lower, whatever it may be. Or if you're happy with the shot, you say, that's beautiful, just keep it like that. To achieve synergy, you need to talk to your pilot all the time. Slowly pull back and move camera right. That's beautiful. Just hold it like that. A very important thing is that the director and the DOP must know who to talk to. There are three people, an assistant, a pilot, and you, the camera operator.
So we work with a lot of like top angles on the car, inside the car.
If they're not clear on who they're talking to, they'll start talking to the assistant or they talk to the pilot, but they should talk to the camera operator. So you have to always position yourself that you are close enough to the DOP and the director that you can hear them talking, what they are saying to each other, and you can deduct from that many things that you need to know. You immediately, after you've landed, you go and you talk to the director and the DOP to get feedback from them. They are going to give you notes. They're either going to say, wow, that's beautiful, we've got it, we're moving on. Or they're going to say, we want you to just tilt up slightly, a little bit more headroom, or let's move a little bit more to camera right, or whatever. They will tweak the shot so that they're happy with it. And it's very important for you to not get involved in other things, but to go and talk to them, because it also gives the DOP and the director a sense that you are in the moment, you're in touch with their project, you care about it, and you want to deliver the best possible shot to that client. The technical communication between the pilot and the operator is also important. If I say, for example, I want you to pivot around something, that's what I mean. Other people may use something else, like I want you to rotate or I want you to orbit. Those are different ways of describing the same thing, but you must understand and your pilot must understand what you actually mean. If I say jib up, or I say jib down, or I say camera left or camera right, because you always look at the frame, you look at what's happening in the frame. The drone may be flying and looking in the opposite direction, which means the lefts and the rights will be the wrong way around. That's why I will always say camera right, and the pilot must understand what I mean when I say camera right. Now, a pilot is not supposed to look at the picture. He can glance at the picture, but his eyes should always be on the drone. That's why it's called line of sight. My job is not more important as a camera operator than the pilot's job. The pilot's job is not more important than the camera operator's job. But we need to understand what the roles are that we play. If those roles are clear and those lines are not blurred, then it's a happy situation. You should never argue with your crew on set. You never argue in front of other people. If there's an issue, you can do whatever you need to do to finish that shot And if you had an issue with somebody, then you can take them to the side and you can discuss it. But I think we must be careful not to let the emotions run away with us. It's always a tension situation, especially if you feel there's something that's not the way it's supposed to be. So we have to be careful because people look at the drone team. You know, the moment the drone takes off, especially the heavy lifters like the Alta 8 and the Alta X, the whole crew is standing there watching us. And they look at this marvelous machine that takes off, and it's always dramatic to see it take off, and there it flies, and it's a 1.5, 2 million rand rig that takes off in the air. So the eyes are on you. That's why we need to look extremely professional. We need to understand our roles, and we need to look the team. We often get that people come and they say to us, wow, you guys look so streamlined, you look so oiled. But that takes practice, it takes finding that synergy. That's why you can never just take a pilot and a camera operator that's never worked together and you just throw them together on a job. That never works out well because it's obvious that they need to practice together and get to know each other and understand the language that they use when they communicate. The other thing that's extremely important is your communications. The communication between you, the assistant, the pilot, and possibly the focus puller, because that's when we work on the big commercials and with the big cameras, there's always a focus puller involved. The focus puller understands the camera very well, but it's an additional person that comes in. He may come from the camera department, or we may bring him into the job depending on what requirements are. When you come into land, you must make sure that you tilt the lens up towards the sky, because the props will blow up dust and small pieces of stone and sand and stuff that can damage the lens, and it can also make the lens dirty. So don't let the lens point down, because obviously when you land you don't want anything to touch the lens. You want to focus up, and you turn your gimbal, especially with the heavy lifters, you turn your gimbal that the back of the gimbal faces the pilot, because he needs that to land safely. The back of the drone you can clearly identify. There's a light on the back of the drone, and that light gives a lot of information back to the pilot and tells him things about the drone. And you make sure when he comes in that you turn the back end of the camera in line with that light. How to prepare for your shot. The way I prepare for my shot is I get as much information as I can from the client side. So you have creatives that is involved in developing the story, the storyboard, the commercial or the feature that you're working on. They've got different ways of doing it. Sometimes there will only be a script, sometimes there will be a shot list with pictures, sometimes there will be the storyboard where you can actually see the sequence and the development. A guy like Ridley Scott, for example, he will storyboard each scene, and you will receive that storyboard and you can see where the drone shots are in the story and what they're supposed to be doing. So that is information that you should have before you arrive on set. How do you get that information? You speak to the production office on our side, in this case Nikki, for example, and you ask if you can get a storyboard from production. You have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, a NDA. You need to have all the information that you can get so that you arrive prepared on set. For me, what I'm doing is a lifestyle. It's not just a job. So I will go to bed in the evening and I will read through this, I will visualize it, and I will think about it. So the next morning when I get up, before I go to set, I will understand what I'm going to do. When the drone takes off, I become the shot. Like I've got my head in the monitor and I live this moment. It's like I'm watching a movie. I feel this shot unfold. That is how it should feel. You should not be accommodating in terms of people that want to watch what you are doing. Have a second monitor for your DOP and your director. Own your monitor. Own that space. This is where you live and you work. And if you are distracted in the middle of a shot, because for me, composition is so critical. I mean, I look at everything in that shot while it's unfolding, and I don't want something in that shot to jar me, because that takes away from the story. Anything that becomes an issue, whether it's too much or too little or a wrong composition, or you do something that takes away from the story, you are in trouble. Now, when I stand there on the day to execute that shot, I stand there with all the knowledge that I can get from the creatives on this production long before I arrive there. I make sure I understand the story. I make sure that I understand how my shot fits into the other shots.
They're never gonna make it.
If you are prepared, you won't be nervous and you won't feel the pressure that much, and you will focus on executing your shot. One thing that I always make sure of is I understand the light in the shot. You must understand where the sun is. You must understand where the drone shadow is going to fall. You must understand what is backlit, what is three-quarter backlit, what is three-quarter frontlit. Very often they will ask you to do a shot where the drone shadow is going to fall onto your subject matter. And that comes with knowledge of how the light is going to work in the shot. You must always understand where the sun comes up and where the sun comes down, and what the arc of the sun is, so that you know at that time of the day it will be backlit from that side, or three-quarter backlit, or whatever it may be. I filmed this example for you with the apples and see how the light falls on the subject matter. We start off fully front lit. You can see that's quite flat, the shadow is behind. Then as we move around, you can see the shadow changes from three-quarter front lit to side lit to three-quarter backlit to backlit. In my opinion, the three-quarter backlit is the most beautiful picture. The other thing to understand is what lenses we work with. We work from wide to long. And if you don't know what I mean when I say that, then you should not be a camera operator. So it's more difficult to operate a longer lens like a 50 or 80 millimeter lens. It makes for very dynamic shots in some sense. If you are tracking a vehicle and the movement in the background will be different to when you, for example, are flying with a wide lens and you're very close to your subject matter. And you also need to understand where your f-stop is in that particular lens if you want to create a certain feel. For example, if we're on a long lens and we want the background to be out of focus, you need to know how to control that depth of field, and you need to visualize it. So I always discuss the lenses in detail with the DOP so that we are on the same page. One thing to note is that the drone could blow up a lot of dust. If you're in a dusty environment, like on a sand road where there's a lot of dust, and they want you to fly low angle shots in front of a vehicle, for example, it's not going to work because the dust is going to be a problem from a visual point of view. You're going to see it, and it's going to be a problem for your equipment. So that's something to understand. And if you can see that in that particular spot where you're going to take off and land, you're going to blow up a lot of fodder or you're going to blow up a lot of dust, then you should mention it to your DOP and your director and also to the AD. In my book, the pilot and the camera operator should both have a very clear feel for the visual that's happening in the frame, because a pilot is not just a pilot. A pilot in the film industry is a pilot that understands what's happening in the frame, and the pilot's job is to help the camera operator to actually execute that shot. The pilot can fly faster, slower, and do different things. We will talk more about that in the masterclass when we talk to the pilot, how to help the camera operator. But the camera operator should also understand how to communicate that to the pilot. Classic shots, which is a classic composition. You can look at the paintings of the old masters, you know, where everything is just perfect, the composition lines, it's maybe symmetrical, the composition lies on thirds, very gentle movements. I always want to get the camera emotionally involved. The camera gets emotionally involved, especially when we fly drones, when you feel the action that's happening in the shot and you complement that. That is something that I believe you develop, or it's a talent like singing. You know, some people have a feel for composition, and some people can hit those high notes perfectly. You know, they've got perfect pitch. And I believe it's the same with composition and feeling the shot. It's a gift that you have, it's a talent that you receive. I think there are people that should not operate cameras because they don't have that talent and they don't have that feel. And it's very important to recognize that. Then you get hectic kind of camera movement where you may want to induce that, or a Dutch angle, or you're the POV of a dragon, or a plane that flies through a valley or something like that. And you must sense that and feel that when you execute the shot. So that's how the emotional aspect of it can contribute hugely. Something that I think is very important is counter moves, which we will visually illustrate. You know, if you track with something, it gives you a certain feel. If the vehicle, for example, is moving in this direction and you are moving that direction, that's a counter move. A counter move picks up the speed in the background a lot. It's very much more dynamic, for example, than a normal tracking move like that. And there are times when you can suggest that counter move if you know that that counter move is actually going to contribute more to that particular mood or vibe that you are looking for in that shot. When you do a pivot around something, for example, I've got you know, a tree over here or a person or whatever, and I'm coming from far away flying towards it. This part of the shot, the drone can fly fast. But the closer you get to that moment where you're going to have to pivot, because this is a fast movement, you have to really push hard on your sticks to keep the subject matter where you want it in the frame. This is where the pilot can help you. The pilot must gradually slow down to that middle point and help you to execute that and then pick up speed again, because this is already dynamic and fast in the middle. But when you approach, it's actually boring until it begins to happen at some stage over here. That's also important for both the pilot and the operator to understand and to get that synergy to work. Composing a shot is a natural thing, but there are things that you can take into account. For example, the thirds. You know, you can feel the thirds. there are thirds that runs this way as well. And then you've got focal points there that you can utilize. I'm showing you examples of shots where you can see how I see the shot and where I will position my subject matter. Sometimes you will want the shot to be totally symmetrical. For example, if you are in front of a car and you're pulling back with the car, you want the shot to be as symmetrical as possible. If you are tracking with the car, you don't want the car to push the frame. What that means is that there's more space behind the car than in front of the car. I was doing some training with camera operators. I actually invited a group of DOPs to come and work with us to see if we can get some DOPs to come and operate for us, because obviously DOPs understand composition and they understand cameras, and it's great to get DOPs involved. We are very fortunate that we have 3 DOPs working with us virtually on a full-time basis. When I was doing this, I looked over the shoulder of the camera operator, the DOP, and I said to him, "That's a nice shot, but you are pushing the frame constantly." And he said to me, "What do you mean pushing the frame?" But if you look, for example, at the Dakar Rally, wow, those guys operate so well. You know, the operators and the pilot, the helicopter pilot, how they compose that shot and how they anticipate where the car is moving, but they always give the car space to move into. I feel as a camera operator and a DOP, I can place the viewer's eye in the shot by putting the subject matter in a position where I want them to focus. For example, you don't want to move the viewer's eye from left to right to left to right, which means that you're operating like this. You want to find your subject matter, get your composition, and you want to hold that. When the camera is doing that, you are getting in trouble with your story. People become aware of the camera movement, and then in my book, that is a problem. I'll give you an example. If I follow birds flying, I will position the birds in the shot, let's say on a third to the left if they're flying to the right, and I will keep them exactly in that spot. I will really concentrate hard not to let the birds come over the middle and start pushing the frame, because that to me just feels wrong. And it's the same thing when you pivot around something. If there's a tower that you pivot around, you don't want the tower to move from right to left, because that feels like over operating. You've got to keep that tower exactly in the same position. If you choose to put it on the third on the right or the third on the left, just keep it there. Unless there's a reason why you need to move it. Sometimes there is a reason why you need to move it. But as a rule, that's a good rule to follow. An example of a shot that we executed some years ago at the Oscar Pistorius trial. Now those are the kind of shots where you only get one opportunity to execute that shot. And I'm going to show the shot to you and explain to you how we did it and what happens in that shot. First of all, we needed to get somebody inside the courthouse on a cell phone to tell us exactly when he was going to come out through the door, because we were hanging just above the court exit where he was going to come out with his entourage, and you only got so much battery power, so you can only hang there for a certain amount of time. In those days, we didn't have the flight times, for example, that we have on the Inspire 2s now. The guy inside said to us, okay, they're coming out now. So we flew out and we hang there in that position. But I had to talk Timothy through the shot in detail and visualize the shot. We knew that it was a one-way street. We knew that the vehicle that's going to pick him up is going to come from the left. We knew from the days before that it's probably a white Range Rover. We knew that he could only move from left to right down the one way, and then there's a robot where he's gonna maybe carry on straight or he can turn. So we have to anticipate all those possibilities. So I said to Timmy, I want you to hang there and I'm just gonna talk to you. Pull back, pull back, pull back, hold it there. But you don't want the shot to become static at any point because it's a moving thing. Everything is moving. It's an unfolding composition. And we pull up and away through the buildings. I'm very proud of the shot because I feel that I kept my subject matter in the frame exactly where I wanted it to. I'm very proud of the way that Timothy flew the shot because he did a brilliant job. He was very smooth. He never stopped the drone because you can think about it. If the drone suddenly stops, then you lose that flow in your shot. I knew the vehicle was going to pull off in a certain direction. All these composition lines apply in this situation, but it means that you have to think about it, you have to visualize, and you have to execute. It takes a lot of practice and it takes commitment. I love paying attention. You have to be in the moment. When you arrive on set, I want to use this analogy. For me, it's like preparing for a race. And to prepare for a race, you have to visualize what you're going to do. You've got to understand what you're going to do. And you've got to be ready to go when you arrive there. And that, everything is involved in that. You must make sure you get enough sleep. You must make sure you eat the right stuff. Otherwise, it's very hard to concentrate. First of all, I'm really passionate about what I do. I want to be there. I make sure I eat the right stuff that's going to give me a sustained energy level. And that's very important because then I can concentrate and I can execute. I find that guys get distracted on a film set. You know, for whatever reason it may be, there's a famous actress that walked past or an actor. They want to go for a smoke break. They want to go for a coffee break. Things work in sequences. So you first finish that shot and that setup. If the setup changes and there's time for you to go on a coffee break, you can do so. But you must always tell the camera operator where you're going. Because remember, the camera operator is in charge. So if you want to go to the loo, you say, I'm just going to the loo, or I'm going to do this, or whatever, so that we know where we are. If there are 200 to 500 people on a film set, and you disappear in the crowd, and we say, well, you know, we've got to go now, where's so-and-so, you know, then it becomes an issue. So you've got to be on point. You've got to make sure that you are ready to deliver, and you must make the client happy. We do not compete with other people. We don't compete with other drone companies. We do not look at what other drone companies do and follow that trend. That is called reasoning by analogy, and we don't want to do that. We want to focus on us, and we want to be the best that we can be. So if you look at what you achieved in the last year, and your vision is to improve what you are doing in the next year, then you're on the right track. Yes, we learn from each other. It's great to interact with people. And I always say that it's important for you to be in integrity with yourself, which basically means you know when you've done your best. You also know when you did not do your best. And I know that if I've done my best and I fail and I get fired, then it's okay, because I know I've really tried my best. And just remember something, we are in an industry where there's a lot of pressure all the time. There's a lot of expectation, there's tension, but it's exciting. It's a journey that we are on. You know, the adrenaline levels that we experience is phenomenal. But that is why I think I'm still doing what I'm doing. It's because we look at those challenges and we find a way to solve the problem, and we innovate, and we are trendsetters because we are all the time thinking how we can improve what we are doing. And that's why clients come back to us. And that's why clients come back to us. People are in awe of what we do most of the time, and they are impressed by the skill that we bring to the situation. But just remember something, please be humble. We are not rock stars. We are there to do a job. We are there to contribute creatively. And you should never arrive on set and think you're a big deal. I'm the rock star. Tell me what to do. You've got to come there and you've got to have this attitude of how can I creatively add to your story? How can I deliver the most beautiful shots to this production? And that is why clients come back to us, is because they pick up on that attitude. They understand that they're going to get value for their money. And that is a very important attitude to have when you arrive on set. Be filled with gratitude, because the job that we are doing is really an amazing job. It is, if you really think about it, how many people in the world actually do what we are doing and we're getting paid for it? You know, it's something to be just thankful for and to be filled with gratitude, and to walk with that sense of gratitude onto the set with your crew, because that's an energy that you share with the people around you, and that energy will affect people around you. If you arrive on set with a negative attitude, with you don't want to be there, or you feel you should get paid more, or whatever it may be, you know, you had an argument with somebody, all those things is negative energy. So the culture that we cultivate in our business is to look for that positive energy, to look for passion, to look for positive vibes, to really try and avoid people that's not team players, people that's not going to work together for that outcome that we are looking for. So that energy is something that we should guard. And if you have that sense of fulfillment within yourself, you love life and you love the people that you're working with, people see it and they hook onto that, and it actually changes people's lives if you can manage to do that and to be a fulfilled person. It has a lot to do with your attitude. It has a lot to do with the choices you make. I always say happiness is a choice. Many people disagree with me on that, but you know, sometimes the circumstances are exactly the same. Your bank balance is the same. Everything is the same, but one day you feel bad and the next day you feel wonderful. That's the emotions that change within us. So it can't be related to circumstances. And I think that if you cultivate that and you share that, then the workspace just becomes a beautiful space to be.